welcome back to the Pod of Thrones San Diego Comic-Con 2019 coverage, I think, finale. I'm Jeff.
I'm Jennifer.
I think this is it. I think this is our last piece of audio, and I saved a big one for last. This is actually probably about 2 hours.
What?
I know. Well, it's a big one. I don't see any reason to... This is 2 panels. I don't see any reason to put them up separately because they're the same thing. So when we went to Hall H, the big hall at Comic-Con, we were there for Game of Thrones.
Right.
Which was one of...
some other things.
It was the second to last panel of the day. But before that was a bunch of stuff that we were interested in, but it wasn't Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. There was Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Those were high on our list.
Yes.
But the first 2 panels of the day, as soon as we got into Hall H, were about Avengers Endgame, which is great. I loved Avengers Endgame.
Yes, I want to watch it again.
It's out on digital now.
Except Vision doesn't do squat.
That's because he wasn't in it, babe.
Oh.
You threw me there. I had to think about that for a second. But
that's right. I was testing you.
You were testing me. Yeah. Well, good test. I guess I passed. Great movie. Great movie. I don't know if 2 hours of panel were necessary, but it was still pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was a little bit long.
So they wound up doing 2 panels, neither of them with the actual cast. So we were in Hall H on Friday. Saturday was the Marvel panel or panels, which we did not get into. But there they announced like what's going on with Phase 4 and all the new movies that are coming out. There's some pretty cool ones. Black Widow's finally getting her own movie.
Yay! Is it going to be Scarlet?
Yeah, but we don't know how it's going to be. Is it a prequel origin story to sort of wrap up her character, or does she
where she's been these last few years?
Well, she died.
Well, I mean, before she died.
Okay. Well,
because, they go from one movie to the next where...
There was 5 years passed.
Right.
Yeah, could be some of that. We don't know. We have no idea what the movie's going to be. They did announce Blade is returning to Marvel cinematic stuff. The Wesley Snipes movies. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's the Daywalker.
Right.
Vampire. But now instead of Wesley Snipes, who's probably getting a little too old for this shit, they replaced him with Mahershala Ali. Yes?
Who's that?
Well, I was going to remind you because I thought you might not quite remember the name. He recently won, I think. Well, he was in the Green Book, which won an Oscar or 2, I think. And it might have been one for him as like best supporting actor or something.
I haven't seen Green Book.
No, we haven't seen Green Book. It took a lot of flack for not. It's a long thing. But anyway, but he was in that big movie. But the thing that we know him from is season 1 of Luke Cage, Marvel's Netflix show. He was Cottonmouth, the bad guy for the first half of the season.
Oh, him.
Yeah.
I like him.
So he's going to be the new Blade.
Yeah.
Well, his character wasn't likable.
No, it was kind of likable. I mean, I feel like, you would have to watch the whole thing to get it. But he was like, he knew better than to do what he was doing, but he did it anyway. And I'm not sure if he was really in love with... We don't need to talk about this right now.
Okay. He's a product of his environment. But anyway, now he's going to be Blade, a true good guy, but a dark good guy.
Neat.
They're bringing in, what's his name? Shang-Chi, I think. Does that sound right to you?
No.
You're going to make me look this up, aren't you? You're supposed to know. Shang-Chi, yes. So that's going to be the first Asian hero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So he's going to get his own movie, which I'm sure all of these individual movies will start leading to the next big whatever the bad thing's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. And there's speculation about what that next big bad thing could be, or the next big major story arc. There's speculation in these panels.
Neat.
So tune in for that. So they announced all that stuff on Saturday. But on Friday, they did 2 panels. The first one was with Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. They are the writers of Avengers Endgame and a bunch of other stuff, including Infinity War, I think. And then the second panel was the directors, Anthony and Joe Russo. They directed Avengers Endgame and Infinity War and Captain America Civil War and Winter Soldier. They actually came from TV. They used to direct Community, a comedy show.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
A comedy show, but remember they showed us that clip reel, like a comedy show that had some interesting action scenes from time to time. Like they did these paintball episodes that were just wild with the action. So the Russo brothers have always been waiting for that opportunity, and they're big comic book nerds. So it was a natural fit for them to get into the Marvel stuff.
They seemed very different.
The brothers from each other? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, they were all right. They weren't like, I thought the Markus and Mcfeely were a little cooler in terms of how they talked about their work and what they did. But the Russo brothers had some good points too.
I agree.
So I'm just going to mash it all together. It's not going to be a full 2 hours maybe, because there were a couple times when they broke for clips and in between the panels and stuff, but it's going to be close to 2 hours of Avengers Endgame talk from the creatives behind it. Someone told me that would actually be better than watching the actors talk about it and just speculating about their characters and all that. And I don't know for sure. I mean, I thought the Game of Thrones panel was a lot of fun with the actors talking about their stuff. But hearing the creatives, you can actually get more answers to the questions of like why this happened and why that happened.
Why they made the decisions they made.
So it was pretty interesting, I thought. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Do you have anything else to add about these guys?
No.
These four fine gentlemen. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, then we'll cut it off there because there's a lot of audio coming up here. So enjoy and hit us up anytime at Pot of Thrones on Twitter.
At Kid Free Weekend on Twitter.
And of course, you can always reach us, Jeff at potofthrones.com or Jennifer at potofthrones.com. We always love to hear from you. So talk to us.
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
There we go. All right. Here's Markus and Mcfeely, followed by the Russo brothers.
Well, hello, Hall H. How's it going? Great to see you all so bright and early. Howdy, Hall H. I cannot believe, after coming to Comic-Con since the 1990s, that I am able to ask some of the geekiest questions in front of the geekiest audience in the world. So this is for you guys. I'm Jeff Goldsmith. I am the publisher of Backstory Magazine at backstory.net. And Avengers Endgame is our cover for issue 37. And we have over 12,000 words of interviews that we were really happy to do. And I'm also the host of the podcast, The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith. And that's where the audio of this actual panel can be found after Comic-Con. So you can look there to listen back later. But now it's my absolute honor to introduce you to the writers of this fine film, Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely. So I would be remiss if we, yeah, you're very close. Have a seat, guys. Just before we start, today is a great day, and it's all great for us to be here. But November 12th, 2018 was a really bad day for Marvel fans worldwide because we lost Stan Lee. And one of the things, as you all know, that Stan loved to say was Excelsior. And Excelsior in Latin, it means ever upward. And it's almost a comment on the quality that he strived for in his comics with all of his collaborators like Jack Kirby and everyone else that Stan worked with. I think it would be cool, right before we start our questions, if we all in Hall H together give a big Excelsior on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Excelsior! You guys are the coolest crowd ever. All right. We're getting into it. So, there was a little movie before this movie called Avengers Infinity War, I think.
I saw that.
You saw it? Okay, good. What would you say briefly, because I have another question about it, what would you say briefly was one of your biggest lessons on Endgame that kind of helped inform you on Infinity War, that helped you inform you for Endgame?
Well, Endgame was all 99% done before Infinity War came out effectively. I mean, there was a lot of work to do on it, but so we couldn't go, oh, they don't like that guy, cut him. It's way too late.
We learned that people really like Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
They're very upset when he goes.
Oh, could you?
Listen, I know it's dangerous even coming here.
Well, look, one of the things that I love is, since I study screenplays all the time, I love lost scenes. And it shows the early math writers do to make the movies that we love so great. And you guys have told me that there was a lost scene in Infinity War during the final battle on Titan, which you've described as Doctor Strange's magical mystery tour. And I think it would be fun, before we get fully into Endgame, if you could describe what that scene was.
Well, we should say we didn't lose it. We took it out.
Yeah, we know where it is.
Yeah. It's not like, oh shit.
That's right. Left it in the cab.
It was partly inspired by Kevin Feige, who, as you might know, has something to do with these movies.
I heard that.
He came into the conference room in Atlanta where we were trapped for years. And he had brought a bunch of comics panels with him because we were pretty far down the road on very concrete things, as you do when you write a script, building the structure. And he wanted to make sure we didn't lose this sort of psychedelic aspect of the Starlin-verse,
right,
where, people travel inside their own eyeballs and things like that. And so we stuck the Living Tribunal in the movie.
That's right.
Really?
As you may know, is a gigantic guy with like 4 faces on one head that rotates and passes judgment upon you, as you do. And so, as Thanos and Doctor Strange came to blows, Doctor Strange blew Thanos' mind and sent him through the mindscape.
Yeah, not unlike the Ancient One did to Strange in Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
So the idea was that he's sort of zipping through the universe, being presented with all of his many crimes, right? And so bodies are being thrown at him. He lands, and things turn into bodies. Like hands are grasping at him, and it's just really kind of grim. And then at the end, he gets dumped in front of the Living Tribunal, who judges him guilty.
Guilty.
Something like that, yes. And it was great. It was when you introduce the idea of the Living Tribunal, it does open up a whole new era.
Well, it's also...
I don't know if my grandmother would understand that.
Well, it's also, if that guy exists, why is Thanos a problem?
Right.
Let's just have him smack him around a little bit.
Well, and I've seen the scene. At the end of the scene, Thanos realizes the smoke and mirrors, and it ends. It seems like it was a smart cut, because what you really let happen to kind of bungle the Battle of Titan is Star-Lord's emotions get the better of him.
Oh, Star-Lord.
Which I thought was really a smart move.
Right.
Well, we were also in the middle of a very, highly paced fight, and to stop it, to have a LSD trip, was fun, but kind of sucked the air out of the punching.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm sure you all know that these two fine fellows wrote the first cinematic iteration of Black Panther in Captain America: Civil War. And they did a fantastic job. Here, you had the odd task of writing the first iteration of Captain Marvel before the Captain Marvel movie had been shot.
Yes.
So I'm curious what kind of collaborating or conversations you had with Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, and Geneva Robertson-Dworet, who were all the co-writers with Boden and Fleck directing Captain Marvel before they went off to shoot. Just really briefly.
Well, it was an even weirder situation than the Black Panther situation, because our take on Panther was going to come out first, so it could at least stand on its own.
Right.
We were writing and filming a Captain Marvel who people would only see after they had seen a movie that was not written or filmed yet.
20 years after.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. 20 years after she had gone to space at the end of the movie.
So you're writing a character
exist.
that has to be, has to work in your movie, has to be strong and have her own personality, and yet has to be able to be different from something that hasn't been written yet. And by the way, that's 20 years earlier. I don't know how.
So we just did it.
Well, yeah. So I remember sitting next to Anna and Ryan as they watched Brie Larson on her first day as Captain Marvel, not in their movie. It is so weird.
That's so minor.
Well, we certainly ran everything by them and said, hypothetically, do you think 20 years from now she might be like this in the thing you haven't written yet? Yes.
That's insane. working with Kevin Feige, he's the man with the plan, and he really brought all these elements together. And I'm just curious as writers, because writers always have to take notes from executives. What was an interesting note that maybe you remember Feige giving you on this Herculean task of stitching together two movies that are also standing alone as separate entities?
Right.
If there's one that strikes you of an interesting note from Kevin Feige that helped you see the forest for the trees, because you could easily get lost in such a task.
Sure.
Right.
Well, he...
Couple things, I guess.
Yeah. Certainly, you get handed these two movies, and your first reaction is panic. Because that's a lot of work. And if it is bad, you will be very embarrassed 1 year, and then you have to wait around because you know you're going to be embarrassed next year. But there's also this great potential for it to be a gigantic moneymaker and a gigantic cultural moment, and Kevin doesn't want to hear any of that crap because he wants to make a good movie, as he rightly should, and doesn't want to hear you talking about box office, doesn't want to hear you talking about pressure, just wants to hear you talking about story. And he said, just stick the landing. Remember Mary Lou Retton from the Olympics? She stuck the landing.
Right.
And that's what people remember. She may have wobbled up here. I don't know if she did or not.
She didn't. She was awesome.
But bam! And if that means cutting the Guardians out of this movie, if that means, shrinking it to make it more manageable but make it a good movie, do that.
Right.
And that's why both movies went under the code name Mary Lou 1 and Mary Lou 2.
Oh, really?
To keep everyone who knew it on the ball, don't crawl up whatever part of your body you're going to crawl up. Stick it.
Can I get a one shot here? Can anybody zoom in on this? On me?
If you could zoom in on Steven's phone, he has video he actually wants to show.
This meant that after it broke all sorts of records, we called in a friend to sort of congratulate Kevin, Lou, and Victoria.
Hi everyone, it's Mary Lou Retton, and I'd like to congratulate Kevin, Louis, Victoria, the entire cast, everyone involved in the Avengers series. I give it a perfect 10 because y'all stuck that landing.
Nice. Well, I will say this. When the day comes that Wheaties finally puts screenwriters on the box,
yes,
you have my votes.
I mean, we don't eat Wheaties. Look at that.
Here's why you have my votes for the box of Wheaties. Avengers Endgame made $852.7 million in the United States, $1.9 billion worldwide, for a cum of $2.8 billion worldwide. So congrats on having a story that really resonated, because those numbers, absolutely, those numbers mean one thing. It means second viewing. It means you captured people's imagination. But I want to kind of take away the glory for a second, if I can.
Thank you.
And I want to take you off the pedestal, because facing the blank page has no glory. And it's very deep. It's a tough thing to do. And so, just to bring things down in the room, what was your darkest moment? Your toughest day on Avengers Endgame? It could be a story issue, it could be a personal issue, where in this huge journey of doing these two films back to back, you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, or I don't know if I'm going to get through this day.
It's on Infinity War, but it's on the two of them early on. I mean, there's a lot of trial and error in these. I mean, we got this job before we started shooting Civil War, and all of the things you see on screen were sort of created in some nascent way the last 4 months of 2015. So we've been living with this for a long time, but it goes through all these ebbs and flows. And there was a point in mid to late 2016 where no one liked what we all had. And so we flew back to Burbank from Atlanta with sort of a panic, all hands on deck, oh my God, we're in trouble. And the biggest thing that came out of that was the Thor storyline sucked rocks. He had to go get the axe, but he was fighting a serpent.
Yeah, it was a serpent. It was much too adventure related and very much insufficiently character based.
Yeah, and so eventually E-Tree and the Dyson Sphere and all of that stuff only came out of that panic. And it was dark because it felt like we'd been on a long time and we hadn't done enough or hadn't done well enough. And, you know, for any aspiring writers out there, we still feel that way all the time. And it's only sort of by the goodwill of all the people you're working with and the willingness to grind.
But yeah, it's the nature of writing also. Like, you cannot push the whole thing forward all at once.
Right.
So you're gonna, you know, push this sequence forward, this character forward, they'll get good.
Right.
But the ones you haven't done yet will still be bad. And that, you can't allow that to undermine your confidence in the whole thing. You just have to know, oh no, now I gotta go back and push that forward. And to Marvel's credit, Marvel knows that very well. Marvel knows how to, you know, foster the writing of a movie so that they're not a panic-based company. There are many companies in Los Angeles that freak out.
Oh, we would have been fired.
Slap a first draft in front of them,
Yes.
and they freak out because it's a first draft. Because everybody wants a third draft for a first draft. Marvel knows damn well what a first draft is, and then they work on it. And that means you never leave the conference room, but it makes good movies.
Structurally, one of the great accomplishments is that fans hadn't seen Infinity War in a year. There was a sense of wish fulfillment.
Yeah.
And you literally kill Thanos 19 minutes and 3 seconds in to the movie in Act 1. So it's wish fulfillment, but it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's an empty death. It just feels so empty, and it doesn't solve their problems. When did that idea come about? Because I think it's brilliant because it gets what everybody wants out of the way, but then leaves them in their seats saying, wait, what's the other 2 hours of this movie?
Right, exactly. Well, we wanted to take your expectations away early. But that comes from Thanos as an omnipotent and omniscient villain. Like, no one in their right mind would create a villain who can do anything at any time. If you go to fight him, he can see you coming. He can make you turn into a bunch of blocks. He can do anything he wants. So the whole time, we're spending a couple months going, what do we do with this guy? And I think it was Trin Tran, our executive producer. I don't think she was suggesting this. She was just complaining. She said, why can't we just freaking kill him? And we all went, whoa. What if we killed him? That would help us.
Why didn't the Avengers ever think of that?
Yeah, no, like, why would he let you kill him? Well, because his mission is over. That makes sense.
Frankly, weirdly enough, killing him helps him as a character. Because it cements, it cements the fact that he really is doing this for his stated purpose. He's not going to then sit on a golden throne and, you know,
bring me all the cookies in the universe.
More skulls. No, he's done. And that's the most sort of shattering thing to the Avengers. Not that he won, but that he really did mean what he said.
Yeah, it gives him time to write his new book, Gardening Through Carnage.
Exactly.
I can't wait to read it.
And he makes soup.
Yes.
Thanos makes soup.
I'm going to do this next bit in my best SpongeBob SquarePants TV show voice. I'm curious about the moment when, after killing him, you flash up a title card that says, 5 years later. Everybody was shocked. And this has ripples throughout the MCU because you have now moved the timeline up to 2023. Yeah. Everything it shows a finality again of the snap and people getting dusted. Yeah. What was it like coming up with that concept? Because again, you are still making your audience question what's going to happen in the movie, which is a good place to have them in the first act.
Yeah. I mean, it's delightful to be given that kind of leeway, for one thing. Because then you get to, you say 5 years later, in your head you go, oh, we're telling a real story. You know, this is not, we're going to get out of jail fast. And it is a chance to really see this whole movie, all of Endgame is about the effects of the last movie. And to really put these people through something, put failure, dead center in the lives of the superheroes, and to crush them a little bit. Not just for, not just because they got hit a few times in a fight, but because for 5 years they have lived with abject failure.
The first movie was a Thanos movie. People didn't know that going in, but it turns out he was the hero of the movie. And the second one was definitely going to be an Avengers movie, specifically the original 6 Avengers movie. And we knew we were escorting a number of them off the stage in various ways. So we wanted, selfishly, to do as much as we could with them. Which meant move them along and do all the stories that we can. And so we talked a lot about that 5-year jump, giving us almost, if you know the What If comics, almost allowing us to do the What If for a number of our heroes.
I love What If.
Yeah, so what happens if this guy becomes depressed, or this person gets married, and this person loses his faith, or what have you. So that's a lot of these decisions are based on those things that we wanted to do, and you can only do that if you could jump some number of years. And if you jump 20, you gotta your visual effects budget's higher.
Yeah, and your actors are really pissed off.
It was a great move, but interestingly, again, it allowed you to do a revision of something that you have been crafting. Yeah. In the sense that Smart Hulk, as he's known, or Professor Hulk,
right,
was an idea that actually you had told me that you tried out in Infinity War, in the 3rd act, and finally Bruce Banner and the Hulk could make peace to share the same body together and figure out a way through it. But as you said, it didn't work in the 3rd act of Infinity War because it just stood out like a sore thumb.
And that again is, these movies are worked on up until release. There's no point where people go, no, this is great, just screw it, let's go to Hawaii. We wrote it, we shot it, and then went on to shoot most of Endgame. And it was, he achieved union with the Hulk.
Basically,
while inside the Hulk Buster.
That's right, that's how he beat...
burst out and kicked Call Obsidian's ass. His space ass. And it didn't work. It was completely the wrong tone for that moment in the movie. It was like this victory when we were headed toward a crushing defeat, and it was tone deaf. But we had already shot Endgame.
Right. So
where he was already Smart Hulk.
Imagine the first act of Endgame, he's Smart Hulk in all of those scenes, meaning when he goes to kill Thanos, meaning when they're sitting around the compound going, when Tony's returned. So that required some adjusting, and it also meant that we could use the 5 years as the transition, right? Like you hint that he's got problems coalescing, and in the 5 years he figures it out. You have a couple of lines about gamma radiation, and he's eating pancakes, and off we go.
Well, it's also like you get it. I mean, part of the thing we learn every time you write a movie, and particularly a movie where it is on a continuing storyline, is you don't have to explain as much as you think you have to. You can go to Queens, people know who Spider-Man is, I don't need to see him get bitten by a spider again. Like, okay, he's a combination of Hulk and Banner. I get it. Just give me a crumb to hang on to as to how it happened.
Well, and it's great that you did it as a reshoot, which is the purpose of a reshoot, which is to add something to it. And the fact that you're always kicking the wheels as writers, it's healthy and it's good, even though it's painful.
Well, part of the challenge and part of the pleasure of this giant task of these 2 movies is, how do you tell everything you need to tell, weave it together, and keep it light enough so that you're not bogging down all the time. And a big sequence where you see these 2 guys achieve union takes time and takes attention away from the story. A really funny scene where the Hulk is eating pancakes. It's fast, it's funny, it makes you really happy, and it is a scene I haven't seen in a superhero movie before. Let's accept that challenge and try to push the whole thing forward, push the genre forward.
Hear that, writers? Pancakes.
Pancakes.
We're going to go into the time heist. And the good news is that they just told me backstage they blocked out 2 hours.
Yeah.
To really get through it. No, we're not going to go there. Thank you. But what I love is you told me for Backstory Magazines that when you started on your time travel research, you actually consulted physicists. Yeah. And I love that you did. Just tell us a snippet of something that they told you that resonated.
Back to the Future is bullshit. I mean, again,
direct quote from a physicist.
That's so the quick answer to this is, we knew we wanted to go back. What other franchise could do what we were allowed to do? Go back to the other movies to get your 6 MacGuffins and bring them forward to solve your problem, and allow yourself to do all sorts of emotional triage as you do it. People get to meet their fathers and mothers and whatnot. But if you operated by Back to the Future rules, every time you went back and came back, you would have a new Biff's Casino, right? I guess Back to the Future 2 rules.
It's a very old movie by now.
Well, they know.
You say Biff's Casino, it just went...
They know Back to the Future 2.
This is Hall H.
This lady knows. You can imagine that if every time a new universe was created, we would get nowhere, and we wouldn't know how to solve anyone, because which one did what? It was not helpful to us, and we were worried that maybe we couldn't even do this idea. But we brought legit physicists in, quantum physicists, who said it probably doesn't work that way. As much as I love those movies, it probably works this way if it works, because again...
Which it doesn't.
It doesn't. So the idea that branch realities of quantum travel, and that's what we said, we got Scott Lang, we can maybe do some of this. Like, there was a lot of light bulbs going off when we did some homework.
I think it's great. Actually, geeky question I'm going to ask a few today. Does Ant-Man survive the snap because he's in the quantum realm? Is there something special
about
it?
Half of the quantum realm disappear?
Right, or was it he just coin flipped lucky?
I think he coin flipped lucky because the stones do not differentiate between realms.
They don't. Yeah.
Tardigrades.
Okay. Had to ask. Now, one of the things that I've known in Hall H for years is whenever they show photos or videos, they tell you have to keep your cameras down, you cannot take pictures. I'm telling everybody right now, you can take your cameras out because we have permission. These cool fellas have given us some images that I'm going to share. And for our fine AV techs here at Comic-Con, if we could prep photo 1.
Is Jeff naked?
You are going to see... You were going to see
how I had that.
The time stones of their war room, of the drawing room. If you could note, that's Backstory Magazine. That's our cover. Very good.
Very clever, Jeff.
Hand painted.
Very clever.
Yes. There was. I forgot to tell them to do that earlier. Yeah. But thank you, AV. So this is their original iteration of the stones. Yeah. And as you could see, they're placing where they are, and then how many stones are together. And you could zoom in and look on this later. It's totally fine to take a picture. But how difficult was it as you were plotting the time heist to map that out, to realize your possibilities?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We didn't even know that Space Stone was also going to be in Captain Marvel. We could have got it from there.
Oh, my God.
No. This is in between. I looked this up on my computer recently. This image is from 1 week after Comic-Con 2016. Because on my computer is pictures of me looking haggard, in the hall there, and then it's this. And so this is in between drafts 1 and 2, where we're trying to figure out, because our first drafts, they didn't go to all the same places. Specifically, they went to, we moved around a lot. We didn't go to the Avengers movie in that first draft. And Joe Russo said, why aren't we going to the Avengers movie? You're right, we should do that. So this is a list of everywhere we could think that they had been in the movies. And now we're trying to figure out where we could go. So we eventually just sort of picked some places.
Yeah, and below those are the legendary baseball cards.
Right.
Every single available Marvel character. And it really does start like this. You throw that on the board and you go, is there a story there? Could we go Kamartaj, Stark Tower, Stan Lee, and give me a side of fries?
Right.
Perfect. Thank you, AV folks. And the folks running AV and Hall H do an amazing job, so please give them a round of applause. The difficulty with explaining time travel is that you're talking exposition.
Yep.
And you have a scenario where the Ancient One, who you realized was in 2012, she explains that the stones represent the flow of time. When you take one, you splinter time, creating alternate timelines. Smart Hulk counters that if After the mission, they put the stones back at the moment from which they were taken. They will collapse the timelines. Essentially, Hulk smash time, which I think is a brilliant idea.
Yes.
So it's so easy. The Russo brothers did a fantastic job of adding visual flair to it, of the whole movie, yes, not just that one scene. What was it like to boil such tough exposition down to such a simple level that my kids can understand it?
Well,
that takes
start by writing a 40-page scene and then start trimming. I mean, we had to boil our time rules down to something, and it came down to the stones. The stones are going to hold the universe in place effectively. You take them out, things start happening. And again, this is the pleasure of having this universe to deal with. We needed someone to explain it. Who's the most entertaining explainer in the Marvel universe? Let's get Tilda. She's not dead back then. Right. We can get her.
And it's Doc Brown on the chalkboard. We called it that a lot, right?
Yeah.
It turns out we had to do that a number of times. Like the whole Hulk explanation, hot tub time machine, all that stuff. That is in large part because we showed it to some test audiences, and every time Nebula shot old Nebula, everyone said, well, why doesn't she disappear? Because we told you it doesn't work that way. Yeah. But we had to really underline it so that we go out of our way to just exposit the hell out of it. Yeah.
I think that's a great explanation. Just a quick geeky question. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we have a lot of other things.
Oh, this is the geeky question?
Yes. It's not going to get worse than this. There was a great movie this year that came out, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Won an Oscar, and it's interesting because you get into the multiverse, and that's a way that timelines could go. Even in Spider-Man Far From Home, we have a conversation about Earth 616, and we know, because good geeks know, that Earth 616 is the representation in the comics, and that the MCU is actually Earth 1999. Yes?
You're blowing
geeks out there? All right, good. But nonetheless, did you ever decide that there was maybe a moment you were going to get into the multiverse?
Super multiverse. It clearly exists, right? Because Doctor Strange has talked all about it. I mean, that's part of the fabric of that. And we may not, this may be where I disagree with Marvel or where they're going. I have no idea where Kevin Feige is going. I don't know what's happening tomorrow. I have no idea.
Are you okay?
But I'm a big believer in stakes. And if you tell me that I can just go get another Natasha and another Tony and we can keep rolling, then particularly my grandma's going to go, well, why didn't I watch that? And yet we are retraining the audience all the time. I may be wrong 2 years from now where I want all sorts of stories from people I already lost.
Well, particularly in a movie where we are very much heading toward some final resolutions, toward things ending, toward people leaving. If you go, but there's 75 Tonys out there, right. There's 75 billion Tonys out there, your drama is going to suffer.
Right.
Because
your stakes are lowered.
Right. Now, these things may or may not be true, but for the concrete rules of your movie, you have to run with the people. To dance with who brung you, as they say.
Time travel opens up the doors to something that's always great, which is being able for a character to have another moment with a loved one who's departed.
Yeah.
What you guys did with Thor's arc, by turning him into Thor Lebowski, essentially, is something that's beautiful, but also he's been through a lot between what happened in Ragnarok and, again, even what happened in Infinity War.
Yeah.
And he has that great moment with his mother, which was fascinating because just like you didn't show the Power Stone being collected in Infinity War from Xandar, here you actually don't show the Reality Stone being collected. We just see Rocket kind of sneak off with a syringe, which is hilarious in itself. But you take time in the middle of this actiony scene for an emotional beat.
Yeah.
And I think emotional tracking is important. When did you realize he was going to have that moment with his mom?
Well, we knew, once we figured out the sort of track we wanted Thor to be on, that he was really going to crumble as any of us would crumble. That the only person who could put him together, we wrote a scene with him and Jane, but Jane isn't the person to put him back together. Odin is not the person to put him back together. Really, it only is his mother. And we couldn't have him run, get the stone, then go talk to his mom. It would take, a disproportionately large amount of time. Plus, we never know how the ether turns into a stone. No one's ever seen it happen, it just happens.
Yes. It seemed for decorum that maybe getting it out of Jane Foster was better left off screen.
Well, actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because I know that you wrote a scene. We talked about it in backstory.
We did.
Yes, a scene that you cut where literally Rocket and Jane have a conversation, and he basically, rather than scaring her with this big syringe, kind of tries to explain what he's doing. Yeah. And her being a scientist, she's like, "Oh, really? The quantum realm?"
Yeah.
So
it was very satisfying, and I thought
cute.
Everybody came off well in it, but it was. We had
a lot going on.
3-some hour movie.
Yeah.
And, some things are better left for...
But look, the scene where the mom gave him the line, "Everyone fails at who they're supposed to be. The measure of a person and a hero is how they succeed at being who they are," which I think is a fantastic line.
Right.
Also, Tony visiting his dad in 1970 in New Jersey was another great emotional tracking beat.
Right.
Now Tony is a father. Yeah. Visiting his own father, who he had differences with.
Right.
And it's another giving us a moment to kind of reflect. What was it like putting in that emotional beat?
It was, it's meaningful on several levels. One, our first movie had Dominic as Howard Stark. And he was in Agent Carter. And we murdered Howard Stark in Civil War. So we've been with Howard a long time. He's actually we're very fond of him. And to be able to bring him into a kind of closure with Tony was really satisfying. Also, over the course of these, my own father died, and after that I had a child. And, the one thing I would like to ask him is, how the hell do you deal with this? And, it was very satisfying to be able to take these two and put them together and give them a real, honest human moment within the craziness of the fact that he just traveled through time to get a magic stone, and you're in an army base that's underneath an army base that's, that we also know has Dr. Zola running around in it. To be able to find that emotional core within possibly the most bonkers section of the movie was really good.
That's sort of the big thing. This can't be a shopping spree, right? We have to go back and do these 6 things, but each of those scenes needs to do more than one thing, and that's perhaps the best one.
It was a great scene. The other greatest bit of emotional tracking was Black Widow and Hawkeye battling for who is going to sacrifice themselves to save half the universe. And it's a different kind of emotional tracking in which you're tracking emotion through action. So rather than the dialogue scenes that we just talked about, now it's emotion. I thought it was fantastic. What was it like writing that and coming up with who was going to live or who was going to die? Was there ever an iteration where Hawkeye lived?
Hawkeye does.
Where Hawkeye died. Hello.
That's the second or third iteration of that. In fact, because a lot of that choreography is Joe and Anthony saying, let's figure out a more intimate way to do this, and so that they're each, Kevin too, they're each fighting to be the hero. It's not a negotiation, right? Used to be other things.
Yeah, you never want one of them to go, okay, you die.
Yeah.
They both have to be the one who wants to do it.
Right. And they both feel that they are the ones to do it for a number of reasons, right? He, because he doesn't deserve to keep going, and she, because this is the only thing that she's been working for all of her life, and certainly in the last 5 years, is getting to this one place so that she can get everybody back.
It was a fantastic scene. What's so wild is that in 2011's Captain America, you show us the stone for the first time. We see Red Skull touch the Tesseract.
The Space Stone, yeah.
The Space Stone. And the entire galaxy is shown suddenly through the top of the airplane. Right. At what point, because I know it couldn't have been back then, at what point did you realize that Red Skull was going to be the keeper of the Soul Stone on Vormir?
Relatively early on. We wrote, it's hard to call it a manifesto when it didn't have one single point. It had about 50 points. we wrote a big document that was everything you could possibly do in these movies. Contradictory, just, hey, this guy's alive. And in there is the Red Skull is clearly alive and has been sucked either into or across space by one of the Infinity Stones. He's awesome. Let's find a way to use him. Let's tie this whole thing together. Let's go back to the first movie that we wrote, only Marvel's third movie?
Fifth or something.
Fourth movie?
Well, I wouldn't.
Chronologically.
I understand.
And let's tie it all together. Now, we did send him into space and sent him away very much on purpose, but didn't know exactly where we were sending him to. But it was more fun than just smoking him into a piece of charcoal.
Yeah, I mean, and it was great because it left your options open. Geeky question. I like to recycle, and there's a thing, like when you recycle, you get your money back. When Captain America comes back with the Soul Stone to Vormir, does
Natasha deposit back?
Yeah, do we get Natasha? Do we get Black Widow back?
It's not. Listen.
That ain't how it works.
No deposit, no return, huh?
I don't know what... Listen. That is not the intent. The intent is a one-way street.
I think you would have... There's a fascinating one-act play to be written of just Steve showing up and talking to the Red Skull. But
how'd you know about my fan fiction?
You know,
all right,
I'm online.
How about this? Did you ever script out any scenes of Captain America confronting Red Skull in a kind of awkward moment when he's replacing the Soul Stone of like, yo, what's up?
Never wrote it. Did in the manifesto document there was one theory that it's Cap who goes to space, encounters the Red Skull, and he has to collaborate with the Red Skull because the Red Skull knows about the stones in a way he didn't, and he would become this sort of golem.
Yeah, it's like the company Midnight Run. Yeah.
I mean, the time ice is going great, but like we're gonna start running out of time, so I'm gonna skip over one thing that I thought was great, in which you basically revive your antagonist then in the middle of the time heist.
Right.
Yeah. Just when we think the threat is over, Thanos comes back because of, what's the term you use for it with the two nebulas? Because I love that idea.
Nebula Wi-Fi sort of thing?
Nebula dual Wi-Fi is what you told me, which I think is a great way to say it. But we're going to take another look into the writer's room, so we're going to go for the second writer's room photo. And we're going to just see for a moment, you can take your cameras out again, we're going to see for a moment what that third act was looking like. You have something about Steve and Tony trapped inside the compound, holding down the fort. I love the Wild West feel. It even says Tony dies at the very end on the far right bottom.
No, you're misreading. It says Tony Pie.
Oh, pies.
Everyone here gets a Tony Pie.
So hungry. So what were some of the challenges of that third act? Because in the commentary, which is coming out in the 4K and Blu-ray home release.
Is it?
Game, yes, it is.
What day can I pick that up, John?
Very soon. And I've heard it, and you said the wildest thing, your earliest iteration, was Thanos literally walking out and throwing down the head of decapitated Captain America from 2012.
Yeah.
So good writers, they need to kick the tires.
Yeah.
You need to go through different iterations. What was it like to get a grip on your third act?
Well, apparently we also need to traumatize children.
No, that one was awesome.
It was, we were working on different ways to bring Thanos into the present day, because we had killed the present day's Thanos, but we had activated the past Thanos. And in one, he, being Thanos, knowing it would take his nebula some time to go rejigger the time machine to bring him back. And so he went down to his present-day Earth, which would be 2014?
14 probably, yeah.
And wiped it out and killed the Avengers. And then Nebula would turn on the time machine. He would walk through with the Avenger he had killed and go, I killed you again.
Right.
What are you going to do about it?
Right. Like Giant Man's corpse was in the background. It was
we were borrowing a little bit from...
That's right.
Old Man Logan.
That's right.
It's a hell of a comic book.
I think it's an awesome scene, but what's really interesting is that, again, wish fulfillment. We've been waiting a year to see them be able to do something that's a win.
Yeah.
And finally they've got the stones,
Right.
even though the price was large. And we get the Hulk snap.
Right.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of different ways you could do that.
Right.
Does everyone come back at once? What you did structurally on the page was brilliant in such that for a moment you boiled it all down to one phone call from Hawkeye's wife. And then missiles come right at the compound, split the entire group up. They're now running around for a 10, 15-minute fight to the point that even though we haven't forgotten, we've almost forgotten when the hero returns moment happens. What was that like to get straight in your head, and did everyone come back all at once?
It took a while.
Yeah, I mean,
We have one where they all come back to the exact same, to the compound. Like, boom, there they are. You hear Mr. Stark, and there's Peter coming around the corner. And then, like, we cut 5 minutes, and they're all eating pizza. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, a pizza party?
It was an Avengers pizza party. You gotta try things out.
You do.
But it was also, I mean, there are a lot of, because there is no hard, fast, real-world factuality about this, we have to make up hard, fast rules in order for this thing to make sense. One of which is that everybody came back to the point where they disappeared. So then they had to get to our battlefield.
Right.
So that gave us a window of time where things still had to happen. It also meant that even though they had effectively solved the problem they set out to solve, it didn't feel like we ended the movie and then started it up again to fight Thanos. It still felt like we were working toward overcoming the final goal. So we couldn't bring them in until we had Thanos in, and it was part of a collective.
That's why On Your Left works so well, right? Because
On Your Left is a great line.
Going,
Yeah.
oh, now they did it.
Yeah.
Even though technically they kind of did it 15 minutes earlier. So
Yeah,
it's a bit of a shell game.
Both times I saw it, the audience was clapping, at that moment.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. During the battle, I'm curious, just geeky question. We know from Iron Man 3 that Pepper Potts was infected with the extremist virus. Mm-hmm. Was there ever any chance of having her use those powers even though Tony neutralized
Well, I think in Iron Man 3 it's established that they'll kill her if they're still
There's always that. All right,
So,
I had to ask.
Okay.
Was Nick Fury ever a part of the battle?
No.
Okay. No iterations, really.
I don't think we ever put him in. One, it was we have such a traffic jam of heroes and so much power that to have a guy who's in combat would be just firing a gun it doesn't come off well for Nick Fury, frankly. So
the death of Tony is an iconic scene.
Yeah.
What were the challenges writing it? Because again, you boil it down to the least amount of dialogue, and I'm sure that there were earlier drafts where you needed to get it out there to be able to start revising.
This is why this is all a dance and why film is the most collaborative art form there is, right? We're sitting up here talking about writing. A lot of times we're in the room with Joe and Anthony, and Trent Tran and Kevin Feige, and we're all sort of trying to noodle this together. But also, these actors have spent a lot of time with these characters. So Chris and I are very happy and did to write all sorts of lovely dying words for Tony Stark. Robert is not happy to say them, right? Robert knew this instinctively. Guy who has talked and talked and talked for many, many movies. When he doesn't talk, you are crushed. And he knew that, and we didn't feel we could turn in a page where he didn't talk. So he says, listen, I want to do much, much less, and he was right.
There's been some debate online. I want to just set the record straight.
Yeah.
Are there actually two physical Captain Americas living on Earth in the same timeline at the same time, so that during the Battle of New York, while Hooded Cap is in New York, the other Cap is all the way across the country on Pebble Beach having a round of golf with his family?
Pass.
To get out.
Okay. Cap doesn't golf.
Okay. But are there two Caps on Earth? Would you agree to that?
There are varying theories. I am very entertained by that theory.
Entertained by that theory. All right. Another geeky question. Gamora, a lot of people have asked questions about. I've boiled it down to 3 different ideas. One of which, when Tony snapped, Tony has technically never met Gamora, so he could have, in his mind, seen her as one of the invading forces. He heard Drax say that I'll do one better. Why is Gamora on Infinity War, but on Titan? But that's the only
Years ago.
That's all he knows about Gamora. So he could have accidentally snapped her, or she decided the whole scene was a mess and she wanted to get out, or when Cap put back the Infinity Stones, that timeline collapsed as we talked about earlier, and she kind of dissipated.
I don't think the rules support your third.
Okay.
Your first implies that Tony knew specifically about everybody he snapped away. And there were an awful lot of, space monkeys out there, and I don't think he went, and that one. So there was some sort of collective order given. Option 2, again, is entertaining. Because
she decided the whole scene was lame, and she's like, I'm out of here.
That's Gamora from just, emotionally, that's the Gamora from the very beginning of the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly.
Who doesn't give a shit about these people.
Right.
It took 2 Guardians movies to get her over to Quill's side. She's not going to hang around and say, I'm going to date him. She's going to get the hell out of there.
At the very least, this sounds like an entertaining prospect that I would like to see in a third Guardians.
If only
I think you will. Well, look, you guys did an amazing job with all this. We're going to show you a few last pictures. If AV could call up the pictures from the Electric State, that's the next project that you're working on with the Russos involved. And you could just scroll through these, AV.
This is a book by Simon Stollenhag. Andy Machete is currently attached to direct it. And it is crazy. Sort of a post-apocalyptic alternative 1996 girl in a robot road movie. So we need another one of those.
This will, just so you feel special. I'm behind in writing that.
That's right.
So I could talk to you.
Exactly. Now keep your cameras out. I'm going to ask the AV techs to get one more thing. I've seen a lot of giveaways here at Hall H over the years, and I decided I wanted to come prepared to give away something to each and every one of you. So keep your cameras out. I, as the publisher of Backstory Magazine, am taking down the paywall for 1 month until August 19th, and I am giving you all Avengers Endgame, our entire issue, for free. So you can put that up there. There's the link, and you could use the password, and that's all you need. You have a month to read it, and take a good picture of it, kids, because I want to give a gift to you, and that's the best I could do.
You're so nice.
Back to you guys. I hope you will join me in giving a round of applause to my screenwriting heroes, Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely.
Thank you.
Thanks, All H.
Ready?
Thank you, Russo brothers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe and Anthony Russo.
Hello, Comic-Con. Wait, before we get started, I just wanted to ask who in this crowd, after this panel, is going to storm Area 51 with us? Anyone up for that?
Comic-Cons assemble.
We have so much to get through in this panel. We're gonna jump right on in. First of all, I want to start by saying thanks to everyone who's here for basically the fans for supporting all these movies.
Yeah, without question. I mean, we've been here many times. We've been up on the stage and said it a few times. We want to say it again. Thank you. Please give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much for supporting us, for supporting these movies. You made the Marvel Universe happen, and we couldn't be more grateful.
So I know we have to get into Endgame stuff, but what do I have to do? Listen, I loved your 4 Marvel movies. I think everyone in this room loved your 4 Marvel movies. What do I have to do, and what do all of us in this room have to do to sort of get you to come back in a few years and direct Secret Wars?
I mean, you twist my arm. That was a favorite book of ours growing up. I think we mentioned a few times how much we loved Secret Wars. I read the whole series in one sitting at I think when I was 12.
Our run at Marvel was among the best creative times we've ever had. So, we would love to work with Marvel again, and maybe at some point in the future that makes sense, and maybe it's on Secret Wars. We'll see.
So I know, again, we have to move into Endgame, but do you envision Secret Wars as a two-parter or a three-parter?
You really like Secret Wars, don't you? I don't know. That could be a six-parter. It was a big book.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, I know we have to move into Endgame, but do you think the Beyonder should be a part of the Secret Wars movie? Or do you think it could be something that from the newly acquired Fox titles?
Why don't we just get Markus and Mcfeely back out here and really dig into it?
You guys up for a story-breaking session on Secret Wars?
Again, I know we have to go to Endgame, but do you think in a Secret Wars movie that we could see like an alt version of a Tony Stark or a Steve Rogers? Because anything is sort of possible.
No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not.
I'll leave you guys be on Secret Wars.
Yeah.
How does it... you guys are about $5 short of breaking Avatar's box office record. How does it feel to be that close?
I mean, it's shocking. Yeah, it's shocking.
Surreal.
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to the fans, the fact that people have responded to Endgame in this way, been following these characters for so many years now, and these stories for so many years. I mean, I think it's a cathartic experience for all of us to see it get to this point in the storytelling, and you saw that show up in terms of how the movie played globally. So it's a big thrill. James Cameron has always been an idol of ours. He's sort of fed our passion for filmmaking from the beginning, and so to be so close to one of his great films is really special. Yeah.
I'm curious. You guys, listen. I've been with you guys a number of times, and you don't fight. You guys are like simpatico. But what was the last big fight you guys had, and why?
I think we got to go all the way back to. Are we getting Mexican or Indian for lunch today? I think that was a pretty big fight.
Mexican.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of our last big fight. Was it about the length of Captain Marvel's hair? Was that the big fight? I don't know.
Was that a real fight?
No, it was a discussion. It was a long discussion.
Maybe a several-month discussion, but yeah, it's like so.
And I think it's still a discussion.
I mean, to be fair, like our process is, we sort of have this like Socratic dialogue between ourselves. It's like it's just point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. And that's kind of how we saw through all of our issues. So you can look at our entire collaboration as one long argument, if you want.
On Endgame, Infinity War and Endgame, who ruined the most takes and why?
I mean, that's like a very close race, I think, between, who did you say, Mackie and Ruffalo?
Yeah, for different reasons. Ruffalo does it because he sort of gets kind of lost in his performance, and Mackie does it because he gets lost outside of his performance. Mackie likes make a lot of jokes on set. So,
who can always nail it in one?
Scarlett.
Yeah,
Scarlett can always nail it in one.
That's why she's Black Widow.
Hardest VFX shot to get right in Infinity War and then in Endgame.
Well, Infinity War, I think it was conceptually, it was the
dusting.
The dusting, yes. I think that took a while to understand what it would look like, and I think we went through a really iterative process of trying to figure out visually how to represent that in a way that felt satisfying and fulfill the idea that they were disapparating and not just falling dead. That the essence of who they were was being absorbed into the universe. Endgame.
I don't even know.
I think it probably was one of the shots you just saw. Right? Wasn't the portals took quite a long time. Yeah. That sequence itself was one of the last things I think we delivered.
Yeah, that was difficult. Right? Yeah,
because it was reliant. A lot of it was reliant on the score and pacing, rhythm.
Smart Hulk was also quite difficult early in the process.
Oh, that's right. He was one of the
we worked on that. A long time before we started shooting, we were developing the process of how did we combine Mark Ruffalo, as Banner and the Hulk, and sort of make it find the sweet. I mean, really, all these visual effects, whether you're talking about it in terms of what happened after Thanos snaps, or what Smart Hulk is, it's really kind of trying to find a balance between what looks interesting and cool and sort of emotionally resonant and not silly. It's because you're dealing with something so fantastical, it's really hard to massage it to the point where it feels real and relatable, as opposed to sort of just something that's like just too sort of strange to accept in a moment of disbelief.
What day do you wish you could relive in filming on Infinity War and Endgame?
Relive.
An Endgame? Well, Endgame is easier.
It's got to be Robert's last day of shooting on Endgame, which happened to be the "I am Iron Man" line. But by the way, has anyone not seen the movie? Because I don't want to be giving out spoilers. If you haven't seen it, you should leave now. The "I am Iron Man" moment, I think it was very emotional because it was not only such a poetic line for Robert to have as his last line, but it was his last day, and it was on the soundstage that was next door to the soundstage where he did his first screen test for Iron Man 12 years earlier. So it was a very...
Couldn't have been more full circle.
Yeah, it was a very emotional day for everyone.
Yeah. But
that Endgame?
Yeah. Or Infinity War.
Infinity War, what do you think?
Relive. Maybe, I guess the first day of shooting was really interesting on Infinity War because we were dealing with, that was the first day where we had the Guardians. We were shooting on Titan, and it was the scene where Tony is trying to get everybody on the same page, but he's having trouble wrangling the Guardians. Peter Parker's there, and it was an interesting day because that was the challenge of these two movies, was combining all these different franchises in a way and on a scale that had never been done before. So for our very first day to have to mix Tony Stark with Peter Parker with the Guardians, that was a very potent cocktail to begin the evening with, so to speak.
I think we actually have some fan questions that were sent in.
Okay.
The first one is about the Hulk.
Great.
Love fan questions.
Everybody in Hall H, I'm sorry I'm not with you. Hello Joe. Hello Russo brothers. Yes, okay, calm down. Now here's the question. I want to know, since Hulk and Banner have finally come to terms with each other, does that make Hulk, the new Hulk, the Professor, the smartest and the strongest?
What do you guys think?
Yes?
I don't know. All right, how many people here think that Banner is now the smartest Avenger? Okay. Now Banner tried to solve time travel, but he didn't. Who solved time travel? Okay, how many people here think Tony is the smartest Avenger? And now, most importantly, how many of you think...
I'll say this. I know there's one member of this audience, my daughter Grace, who would say that Shuri is the smartest Avenger.
Shuri's the smartest Avenger. All right, next question.
The next one comes from someone named Chris.
Okay. Oh, Chris.
Which Chris?
Hey, Comic-Con. Hey, Anthony. Hey, Joe. Okay, guys, so I got two questions for you. First question. After Steve returned all the Infinity Stones and finally got his dance with Peggy, what do you think was the next thing that he made sure to do? Second question. You guys have directed 4 Marvel films. Out of those 4, which one was the most stressful? Which one was the most relaxed? That's it. Bye, guys.
All right, well, that fan snuck 2 questions in. So, yeah, after Steve finally got his long-awaited dance with Peggy, I don't know, it's a good question. I mean, perhaps he and Peggy tried to make a baby? I don't know.
I think he went to the bathroom, because that was it took him a long time to return all those stones. So it, He was holding it for a while.
But it's interesting. I mean, if you think about it in terms of the sort of alternate reality question. I know there's many different theories about sort of how this stacks up, and I know Chris and Steve were just talking about some of them.
Don't go there.
Steve can, depending on where you go with the alternate reality, Steve can do a lot of things. Like he could go rescue Bucky from Hydra. He could he could route Hydra out of S.H.I.E.L.D. He could go find himself in the ice and figure out sort of a rotation where the two Steves can take turns, and he could spend more time at home with Peggy. I don't know. Lots of stories. Yeah.
He had a second question.
What was the second question? Most stressful movie?
Yeah.
Or least stressful?
Most stressful. You want to do that?
Most stressful had to be Infinity War, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because we had Endgame right behind it, and I think having those two movies up against each other certainly made it very difficult to focus on those two massive stories at the same time. And it was really taxing to everybody, the crew, everyone. Least stressful.
Probably Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier was, even though it was an ensemble, it was a small ensemble, and it, as the movies got exponentially larger in terms of what the cast was, the scope of the story, they became more challenging just on a sort of a logistical level to accomplish this, and a storytelling level became very complex. So I think that we kind of the arc got more stressful as it went.
I believe we have another Chris that sent in a question.
Which Chris is this?
Hello, what's up everybody? Chris Hemsworth here. Slimmer version than the last time you probably saw me in Endgame. And I want to say, wow, thank you so much for the support through all of the Marvel films. But I've got to say, what a way to finish, and that was just beyond all expectations, and we could not have done it without the fans. We love you guys, and I want to say thank you. And also to Joe and Anthony, the two handsome gentlemen sitting there on the stage in front of you. You guys, I want to ask you a question, right? Who do you think would be the better leader for the previously known group Guardians of the Galaxy, now known as Guardians of the Galaxy? Me or that other guy? Quince or Quail or something? Yep. Me? Thank you. I knew it anyway. I never knew an answer, but I appreciate it. Love you all. Wish I could have been there with you, but I hope to see you all sometime soon, and have an amazing time.
Well, that wasn't really a question. That was more of a statement, wasn't it?
Sort of strange fan questions.
Yeah. Well, we could maybe go to the next real question.
I think there's someone named Paul.
Okay.
Hello, Joe and Anthony. Hello, Comic-Con. I'd love to be there with all of you, but I'm not. Joe, Anthony, I have a question. There's been some debate recently about who is the sexiest Chris. The best Chris in the Marvel universe. I don't care about best Chris. I care a little bit more about best Paul. I'm guessing number 2 is Bettany. Look, that's not why I'm phoning in this video. I have a question for you. If you had to rank best America's ass, which Chris would it be? Oh, Paul. You choose.
We're not even going to touch this one. I'm going to make you guys answer this one. All right, best America's ass. Hemsworth. Pratt. Evans. All right.
That settles it. Sorry, Paul.
We have one more fan question.
Okay.
I can smell it, Hall H. Where it all began. Anthony, Joe, what's up? My creative brothers and brothers in truth. You having a good time? Hell yeah. Yeah, I bet this is a heck of a panel. I got one for you.
I'm trying to give this to Julie.
Biggest single difference between Tony Stark with I Am Iron Man at the press conference at the end of our first and I Am Iron Man to Thanos in Endgame. How do you encapsulate that? Brain teaser.
All right. Now that's a real question.
The biggest difference, I think,
If you can look at it a lot of different ways, but I think, we've talked about before, like the arc that Tony Stark went through, sort of beginning as this very egocentric person and sort of finally getting to a place of truly putting others in front of himself and sacrificing in that way. And I just think a really important sort of point on that arc is that at the end there, Tony had become a father. And I think, speaking as a father, there's something that happens to you when you reach that point in life, or if you reach that point in life where you are sort of suddenly aware that others have your job in the universe is to sort of truly serve others in a way that is just reaches to the core of your being. And I think that's the biggest change. Sort of him having had a daughter and having sort of gone through the entirety of his arc. I think he was in a different place there when he said, "I am Iron Man" at the end.
We're moving into a new section of the panel. You could have directed. Actually, let me rephrase this. What are you guys going to direct next?
We're directing a movie called Cherry, starring a friend of ours named Tom Holland.
A little logo. Oh, by the way, we're going to be putting some stuff on the like when you see logos like this during the panel, because there's a lot more coming. You can take pictures of this stuff. Just FYI. So with Cherry, where and when are you filming this thing?
We start filming in October, and this is based on a best-selling book. It's a story set in Cleveland, Ohio, where we grew up. It's a story that's very near and dear to us. A lot of the locations in the book are locations that we grew up in and around. The author of the book actually worked at the same restaurant I worked at a few years after I worked there. And so this is a story about drug addiction and the opioid crisis told in a very fascinating and frank way. And it's touched us both. It's touched our families, the crisis, and so this is a very deeply personal movie for us. This was, the gentleman who wrote the book was someone who went through the same growth arc that we did in the same part of the city that we grew up in, and had a very different experience. And we want to tell his story.
I actually think we have a video that goes, maybe a little video we could play right now.
Sure.
You guys, you introduced Spider-Man. You cast Tom Holland. Talk a little bit about your relationship with him and why he's the guy for this role.
Yeah. Well, he's an amazing human being. He's very kind, lovely person to be around, and an incredibly talented actor. And when we cast him in the part, I grew up. Spider-Man, by the way, was one of my favorite characters growing up, and I really wanted to see Peter Parker played by someone very close to the age of Peter in the books. And when we found Tom, I think he was 19 at the time. So as the actor closest in age of anyone who's played the character. And he's just incredibly gifted and somebody that we want to work with on almost all of our projects moving forward.
I'm just curious, is it going to be, because it's such an adult subject matter, is it going to be PG-13? Is it going to be rated R? Do you know?
It'll be rated R. It's a very complicated movie. It's a very mature movie, and I think it doesn't have the sort of surface level sort of entertainment value that the Marvel movies have, of course. But there are really important stories that need to be told, and Joe and I are in a position now where we can get those movies made, and we want to use that sort of capital that we've built up to tell important stories.
Speaking, you guys have a production company called Agbo. I think there's we might be able to get a logo up there. So you're essentially, if I'm not mistaken, you guys are like studio heads now, or am I wrong?
We'd prefer a more disruptive term than studio heads, but no, we have a company called Agbo that we founded about 2 years ago, and it functions like a movie studio does. It can finance films and greenlight movies, and Anthony and I are the chairman of the company. And really the idea for the company came about through our process with Markus and Mcfeely while making the 4 Marvel films that we worked on together. We would get in rooms and break story in a very disciplined and focused fashion. We had dates that we had to hit, and the 4 of us loved working together. So Markus and Mcfeely are also partners in the company with us. And it's a storyteller's studio is what we call it, because we like to collaborate with everyone who comes in to work with us the same way that the 4 of us collaborated on all those films. And also Steven Soderbergh discovered my brother and I well over 20 years ago, and he held the door open for us to get into the business. And now we want to use Agbo to hold the door open for other young filmmakers to get into the business.
Yeah.
Another Avenger, if you will, that you worked with. You guys produced a movie with Chris Hemsworth, and you made it in India.
That's right.
Yeah. You see the pattern with Agbo. We always envisioned Agbo as an artists collective. And, Joe and I, work as a team, so the process of collaboration is at the center of everything we do every day. And we'd love to just keep expanding that circle. And we've encountered so many wonderful collaborators over the years. We've been able to bring many of them forward, like Chris Markus and Steve McFeely, like Tom and now Chris Hemsworth, forward into Agbo in ways to sort of to give us all new opportunities to tell fresh stories.
We're running a little long, and so okay. I want to ask you about Sam Hargrave.
Speed round.
Right. Yeah. Sam Hargrave directed the project. He has a crazy story with you guys, and I think there's a photo of him on set. If we could show it, but could you briefly talk about Sam?
Yeah, Sam is another example of the expanding circle of
That's not Sam
collaborators.
That's Sam Hargrave.
This is Sam. Guess which one's Sam? So Sam started as Captain America's stunt double in Winter Soldier. That's where we met him for the first time, and he was an amazing stunt double, obviously. And on Civil War, we asked him to become elevate to the stunt coordinator. Then he started directing some second unit scenes for us as well, and finally on this movie he is the full-on director, and so him and Chris are sort of 2 of the people from our history that are now working together on this film.
Moving into another chapter of this panel, and we're going to be jumping into 21 Bridges.
Yeah.
You basically continuing in the tradition of like this artistic collective, if you will, at your company. You recently worked with Chadwick Boseman again.
That's right.
Yeah.
We love Chadwick, another incredibly talented actor, someone that we got to work with for the first time in Civil War when he introduced Black Panther to the world. Anthony and I grew up loving genre movies, elevated genre movies that had something to say beyond the genre, either thematically or metaphorically or socially. And 21 Bridges is a movie, the sort of concept of the film is that, eight New York City police officers are killed at the beginning of the film, and Chadwick Boseman plays a detective who's been assigned to hunt down the killers, and wants to close down Manhattan for one night for a manhunt. And the movie does have a lot of social issues beyond being just an incredibly beautifully crafted thriller with an amazing performance from Chadwick, Stephan James, Taylor Kitsch. I think it's one we're very proud of.
Yeah. So there are 21 bridges in and out of Manhattan.
That's where the title comes from.
I actually think we have a little video.
All right.
So, as I said before, the next thing we're going to be putting up some logos and stuff, and I think you're going to be announcing some stuff that people haven't seen. So, again, you can take some pictures.
By the way, Chadwick is incredible in that movie, but sorry, go ahead.
So I believe you have a few upcoming things at AGBO, the first of which is Magic the Gathering. Oh, that one. So what can you say about the project?
It's a project that we're partnering up with Netflix on. It's an animated project with certainly the potential, I think, in the future to maybe spin it off in a live action. You know, it's a game that we love. We're geeks, and we love Magic the Gathering. So we are excited to tell stories with it. And I don't know if you know the game or not, but if you're a fan of Jace or Chandra, get excited.
I think someone's. You are doing something with Michael B. Jordan.
We are. That's right. Another great friend and incredible actor. This is a movie that we loved growing up, both versions, and the Steve McQueen version, the Pierce Brosnan version, and we are going to bring our own spin to it as producers. We have Matt Carnahan writing the script right now. Is one of the best, we think, one of the best writers in the business, and we have a brand new take on it. We couldn't be more excited to be working on that movie with Michael. He's one of the great actors of his generation, without question.
The next one is Electric State.
There's Markus and Mcfeely, I think, talked about this on their panel. This is sort of a hauntingly beautiful graphic novel that I think Chris Marcus found. They are writing the script to that, and that alone is the reason to be excited about that project.
I believe the next one is something that you have not announced yet.
No, we haven't talked about this, and this is a favorite comic book of mine growing up. I have issue number 1 in a box in my closet. And I don't know if it's sort of a cult indie hit. I don't know if does anyone here know Grimjack? It's an incredible story, and
it's a deep cut.
Yes, it is a deep cut, and we're excited about bringing that one to life.
I was going to say that I knew that was coming, and I walked around Comic-Con Wednesday night looking for back issues, thinking I could get a jump on this, and it's impossible to find on the convention floor. So if you do find it, please get me a copy.
Nice.
The next one, when I heard, why don't you reveal what the next one is?
Okay. Well, this was perhaps our favorite cartoon growing up. As you can see, we love this show, and I used to race home from school every day just to watch this at 4:00. I think maybe you can tell we're slowly hunting down all of our favorite IP from our childhood, and we're going to convert them into stories that we're excited about. So we got our hands on Battle of the Planets.
When I learned that they got it, I let out a holy F because it meant so much to me. But I have to ask: with Battle of the Planets, with Grimjack, are either of those things you could direct, or is it producing stuff?
We're producing Grimjack. Yeah.
Does that mean you could direct Battle of the Planets?
We'll see. Maybe. Yeah. We'll see.
Is Battle of the Planets live action or animation?
If we were to do it, it would be live action.
Meaning, if you were to direct it.
If we were to direct it, we would direct it as a live action film.
Do you have I'm going to pepper you on this one. Do you have a screenwriter on that yet, or is it super early days?
Super early. Very early days. Yeah, very early days.
Let me see what time it is. Oh, yeah. We're going to get thrown off stage really soon. I think that do you have something for...
I do. I don't know. Is there anyone in this audience that's under the age of 14? No one? Come on, there's got to be someone who's under the age of 14.
Wait, I see.
Yeah, there's waving.
I see some hands right over there.
How many people under the age of 14?
To the left, it's definitely.
Okay.
Oh, that kid's definitely under 14.
Oh, that kid's under 14. Can we do this? If you're under the age of 14, would you come up here for me? Would you mind coming up here? Only if you're under the age of 14. If you have to be escorted, please have an adult with you. Okay? Come right up to the gate here.
As the entire room comes strolling up.
I'm 14. Mike, sit down.
Don't ruin it for the kids. Stay in your seat if you're not under 14.
Oh, uh-oh. Wait, I thought there weren't anybody. It wasn't anybody. There's hundreds.
Literally, there's 7,000 people.
Oh.
Oh my God.
How's it going, kids? So maybe while he does that.
Jaden, are you?
Do you want to? While they're doing that, do you want to do a quick selfie?
Question.
Yeah. No, I was going to say you should do a quick selfie. We should put something on the board.
Kids, don't sell this stuff on eBay.
Right. I don't know if you want to do one. There's a pretty cool graphic. I want to give a huge thank you, by the way, to Funko, who gave out those pins that everybody. It's the only time you're going to get those Funko pins is in the room. I don't know if you want to stand up.
Of myself. Here, we're going to do the classic Comic-Con selfie.
The classic Comic-Con selfie.
It's under the Russo brothers. It's under the Russo brothers. It's under the Russo brothers.
I just want to point out I had like 65 questions that we didn't get through. The 50 minutes goes very, very fast. We actually have one little last thing to show, but should we show it now or should we wait for Joe to finish with the t-shirts?
He might be out of t-shirts, I think, by now. I'm sorry. Yeah, so.
They're pushing too hard. Everyone's pushing.
Sorry, guys. We'll bring more t-shirts next time.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry about that. We ran out.
We actually have like 3 minutes, and I want to.
They were signed. Those t-shirts were signed by us, right?
Yeah, we signed those t-shirts. Please don't sell them on eBay.
I have one last question for you guys because it's one last question, and then we're going to show something. These movies are very physical. These movies are very physical on the actors. Yeah. Can you sort of share any stories about what some of these actors have gone through? Maybe even specifically about Hemsworth and Evans.
Yeah. Evans, when we were working on Winter Soldier, you guys saw that clip earlier. He did a lot of that fighting himself. He trained for months to do it. It's really important to us when we do fighting sequences that we have the actors do it because it adds a visceral quality to it, a level of realism. And he used to go home, beat up every night, bumps and bruises everywhere. So kudos to him for putting that effort into playing this part for you guys. And then
similarly with Chris Hemsworth, in order to play the larger, heavier Thor, he had to wear a really substantial bodysuit that was, quite heavy, and so he had to, and also had to fight in that suit. So it's those fight sequences are difficult enough on the actors to sort of put them in sort of difficult costumes can compound things, and Hemsworth did actually end up hurting his back quite badly, unfortunately, but it's healed. But we had to postpone a lot of his shooting as a result of that injury. But thank goodness he came back from it. We finally shot him out.
Finished his character, yeah.
I'm just going to say, I really do hope Secret Wars happens.
We know.
Because I would really love to see you guys, and I think everyone here would love to see you guys return to the Marvel Universe. But, ladies and gentlemen, the directors of Avengers Endgame, Joe and Anthony Russo, and as we step up and leave, we're premiering a bonus trailer for the home video release of a certain movie that you might have heard of.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. It's been really special. Thank you for coming.
And we'll see you soon.